My name is Gordon Hilton Fick, and this is a second video introducing the Junior Exocet. Before we begin with the illustration, as I did in the first video, I thought I would provide a bit more background. The Exocet technique has been around since approximately 2009. An exocet is established when there are 4 cells, 2 base cells and 2 target cells, and that for each candidate in a base cell, one must show that that digit or that candidate from that base cell must occupy one of the target cells. That is I guess one could say, the overarching definition of what it means to be an exocet. Now, it was in its early days noted that one merely needed, or merely is, I'll say in quotes, but one needed to check that if you removed a base cell digit from one of the targets, that you would find there was no solution to the puzzle. That principle was behind showing that 4 cells, the 2 base cells and the 2 target cells, formed an exocet. During the next approximately 3 years, several people, and most notably David P. Bird, contributed to a way to establish what I think is best called a pattern, and that is the Junior Exocet pattern. Rather than the exocet generally, which required checking a series of conditions, the Junior Exocet involved the establishment of a pattern that, one identified, immediately led to certain conclusions, and then led to a lot of other implications too. So for our illustration today, I'm going to start with this very hard puzzle, and in particular, I am reasonably sure that there are no ways to establish any exclusions at all using alternating inference chains or almost locked sets, or by any coloring method. I may be incorrect here, but I'm fairly sure this is a very difficult puzzle for which there are no steps forward initially, unless one recognizes that there is an exocet, and in particular that there is indeed a Junior Exocet. So what we're going to do then is, first of all, as we did in the first video, label what we'll see in a minute are the base cells. Then we'll also label the 2 cells, which we will see in a minute are the target cells. So we will see these 2 cells here as base cells, and we will refer to this as target cell 1, and this is target cell 2. Again, one can show that for each digit in the base cells, that digit must occupy one of the target cells. In other words, if we were to go through the verification digit by digit in the base cells, we would be able to establish that the target cells must contain the target cells. Further, must contain two of the base cell digits. Now, what is also directly available from the Exocet statement is that the target cells must contain different base cell digits. So if we were to, for example, determine that 1 and 8 were the base cell digits, then either 1 is here and 8 is here, or 8 is here and 1 is here. And that would be established. Now, I'm not going to walk through the checking of the Exocet here. Rather, what we're going to do is build the Junior Exocet pattern. And I will attempt to go through why the Junior Exocet pattern works. So, like before, we will first note that there are companion cells here and here. And we can notice that the two companion cells contain givens that are not base cells. So that's the first thing we are able to check. The next thing I will do is label the mirror cells, and they are here and here and here and here. Now, you'll remember from video 1 that for target cell 1, the mirror cells are these two cells, that being row 3, columns 8 and 9. For target cell 2, the mirror cells are these two cells. They are row 2, columns 5 and 6. Okay. Next, we will establish the cross lines. And the cross lines are indeed determined by, in this case, the column in the left vertical chute, or left vertical band, that is not in the that is the column but does not contain the first block. So that gives us these cells. And next is the column that is determined by the first target and the second target. Okay, so we've pretty much done the coloring that we need for the moment of the base cells, target cells, companion cells, and the mirror cells. Now let's label what we will identify as the Junior Exocet condition, and then I will attempt to explain why we will obtain that this particular set of 4 cells, the 2 base cells and the 2 target cells, determine an exocet without any checking digit by digit. So we can see that 1 is in row 4 and in row 8. 5 is in so going back again, candidates, 1 is in row 4 and row 8. 5 is in row 1 and row 9. And 8 is in row 5 and row 9. Now, notice that for each of the base cell digits, they can occupy the cross lines at most twice. Now, let's think about what we need using the basic principles, the basic rules of Sudoku. Well, oh, and another definition I wanted to give you, by the way, is the cross lines that are not in the Junior Exocet band or Junior Exocet chute are called the S cells. That's capital S in quotes, the S cells. Okay, a little bit of more terminology. Now, let's recall, it's a very, very basic thing, that for the cross lines, which in this case is columns 3, 4, and 7, we need to have each of the digits 1, 5, and 8. Right. So we can see that we must then have, for each of the base cell digits, we must have a 1 here, and so on, a 5 here, and an 8 here. Right? That is Sudoku. We must. Now, the Junior Exocet condition, we can see, for example, with row 1, with candidate 1, the first base cell candidate, that there are at most 2. There are at most 2 instances of that digit. What does that mean? It means that the third one must be in the Junior Exocet chute. In other words, the third one must be in here, or in here. And that applies to the 5 and the 8 as well, because we are restricting the base cell digits to at most 2 rows in the cross lines. These are the so-called cover houses for each digit, each of the base cell digits. Okay, well, in particular, we can see that because in block 1 here, because block 1 contains the base cells, that there is at most 1 place for either 1, 5, or 8. In here, here, or here. Those are called the escape cells, by the way. There's a fair bit of terminology here. Okay? Only 1 digit of 1, 5, and 8. So we've still got 2 more to place. 2 more to place in the Junior Exocet band. All right. What does that mean? Well, it means that those 2 digits that are left to place must be either in this target cell, can't be here because it's a given, can't be that in that companion cell, so it must be in this target cell, right? Further, the second digit must be in this target cell. And lastly, we can see that the target cells must then contain different base cells. once we determine if I may, the true, so-called true base cell digits. So notice that this requirement of the two-cover house rule, or the Junior Exocet condition, forces the target cells to have only base cell digits, and further, that they are different base cell digits. In other words, if we were to determine that the 5 goes here and the 8, or that 5 and 8 were true here, then either 5 is here and 8 is here, or 8 is here and 5 is here. Okay, that means we're ready to make some eliminations. We can see then straight away that in the target cell 1, that 2 and 6 are excluded. And further, the 9 is excluded. Oh my. In other words, this very hard puzzle gave us no eliminations using other methods. These are the first eliminations we get using the Junior Exocet condition. Now, something else to keep in mind here is we now know that once we determine what are the true base cell digits, then one of them is here and the other one is here. Okay? And in addition, in the cross lines, there will be 2 instances of the true base cell digits. In other words, if we were to determine that, say, 1 and 8 were true, then we would know that 1 is in this row or in this row. Well, it must be in one of them. And 8 must be, in one of these 2 rows. So notice that if we were to determine that 1 and 8 were the true base cell digits, then we would know that 1 must be here or here, and 1 must be here or here. Similarly, that applies to, say, the 8. Now, I'll come back to this because we're going to get some exclusions here that aren't available directly, but what we get is that once we know what the base cell digits are, the true base digits are, we'll get some additional exclusions because that will determine where the true base digits must be in the S cells, because the S cells must contain the true base digits twice. Right. All right. So notice we have completely gone through the checking now of the Junior Exocet condition, and we have obtained these 3 exclusions. Now let's give a try to the next part to this that comes from the, if I may, the implications from establishing the Junior Exocet. So the first one we get is that the 2 target cells must contain different base cell digits. Next up is that the mirror nodes, that is, in our example, these 2 cells and these 2 cells, they must contain the same digits as their opposite target cells. In other words, the base cell digit that are in here will be the same as the base cell digit that is in here. And similarly, this one and this pair must contain the same base digit. And I'll emphasize again that the two true base digits must each be true in two S cells. Now, I will also mention again that in David P. Bird's compendium, he lists a total of 12 more logical implications from the Junior Exocet. 12, I know. Wow. And I would refer you to David P. Bird's compendium for all of this, for all of the remaining 12 implications from the Junior Exocet condition. And you can find the compendium on the Joy Sudoku forum. And then if you search on the compendium, it pops up right away. Okay. Let's now, though, go through and see if there's anything more we can do with that rule that the mirror nodes, or the pair of mirror cells, must contain the same digits as their opposite target cells. And there must be one digit that is not one of the base cell digits. Okay, so let's have a look at the mirror cells associated with target 1. And we could ask, is there anything we can establish here? Well, let's see. We have 1, 5, and 8 in the target cell, and we have 1, 5, and 8 here. Notice here there are no further exclusions directly available. Same thing true. 1, 5, and 8 are here, and we have 1, 5, and 8, but nothing is locked like we saw in the first video with that first puzzle I gave you. So we don't get anything immediately from that, but I'll come back to this in a minute. Now, let's go now to the challenge of determining if there are any incompatible base pairs. Again, this is illustrated in the compendium, and it is done on a case-by-case basis. There are some patterns one can determine in the placement of the base cell digits in the cross lines. I find myself, most of the time, I'm interested in doing this checking logically for each circumstance. However, as David would point out, there is a pattern here as well. Well, let me see if I can begin to establish what is needed here. So what I'm going to do now is map out the incompatible base pairs that are present. I won't maybe go through all of the steps, but just point out that it's the same process that we had as before. So first of all, I'm going to highlight these cells and these cells. And it turns out, using the same process as before, that there is a UR thread. And there are two of them. And further, as we will see in a moment, one of them will be true if, in fact, the base cell digits are 1 and 5. Notice we have shown, or I have hopefully illustrated carefully for you, that if 1 and 5 are the true, were to turn out to be the true base cell digits, then either 1 is here and 5 is here, or 1 is here and 5 is here. One of those two must be true. If that is the case, let's start with, I'll take this pair first. If 5 is here and 1 is here, that means that 1 is here and 5 is here. Oh my. That means let me see if I got this, if I picked the right ones here. I believe I have. If 1 is, let's see now. If 1 is here, sorry, if 5 is here, then 1 must be here. And if 1 is here, then 5 must be here. That means, yes, I'm okay here. If that's true, then 1 cannot be here. It's the only remaining place for a 1. And if 5 is here, yes, this is okay, then 5 cannot be here. If that's the case, then we see that 1 and 5 are forced into those two cells. They're hidden, but then they become naked if, in fact, 1 and 5 were the true base cell digits. In other words, if 1 and 5 are here, and 5 is here and 1 is here, we get a deadly pattern. We have the 1 and 5 and the 1 and 5. It's a deadly pattern. Let's take the other one. If 1 is here and 5 is here, what does that mean? Well, that means that 5 must be here and 1 must be here. Aha! Notice again, that means that 5 cannot be here and 1 cannot be here. What is that? What happens then? That means that we have a deadly pattern. These are hidden, but if 1 cannot be here and 5 cannot be here, then 1 and 5 are the only possibilities in these two cells, and we have the second deadly pattern. In other words, if 1 and 5 are the base cell candidates, then we get a deadly pattern. Either the one based on row 1 and row 7, or row 1 and row 6. Right. Now let's try, take these off, and let's try now, maybe a bit surprisingly, 5 and 8. Now let's try 5 and 8. Okay. Let me see. Now I have labeled 5 and 8. That means if 5 and 8 are the true base cell digits, then either 5 is here and 8 is here, or 8 is here and 5 is here. And you can then check again directly that if 5 and 8 are the base digits, then we get a deadly pattern. There are two UR threats, and one of them is forced. One of them must be true. All right, what does that mean? It means that 5 and 8 are incompatible base pairs, and 1 and 5 are incompatible base pairs. Oh my. This is the next really interesting part to this particular puzzle, because we then get that 5 and 8 are incompatible and 1 and 5 are incompatible. What does that mean? It means that 5 cannot be a base cell digit, because either 5 goes with 1 or 5 goes with 8. Wow. That means, and this is really cool, that 5 is excluded. Oh my. Now let's continue with this puzzle. First of all, because we now know that 1 and 8 are here, oh boy, that means that we cannot, that 1 and 8 are locked. So we can't have 1 here or 8 here. In other words, since 1 and 8 is locked in the first block, the other 1s and 8s are gone. Also, we can see that 1 and 8 are locked into the first row. So 1 and 8 are gone here. Oh my. Now, there's more, because this is now still an exocet. In other words, we now know that 1 and 8 are the true base digits. And since this is an exocet, we now know that 5 cannot be here, and it cannot be here. Whoa. Oh yeah. What does that mean? Well, let's continue. You'll recall I mentioned that one of the implications of the Junior Exocet pattern is that once established, the 2 true base digits must be true in 2 S cells. Oh boy. That means that a 1 must be here or here, and a 1 must be here or here. Further, an 8 must be here or here, and here or here. What does that mean? It means that 1 cannot be elsewhere in the 4th row. It must be either here or here. So that means we lose those 1s and these 1s. Okay. Let's do 8. 8 must be here or here, and must be here or here. In other words, 8 cannot be elsewhere in rows 5 and 9. Must be in the S cells. So that means we lose the 8 here, the 8 here. We lose the 8 here and here, and here. So that is the conclusion to this second video on the Junior Exocet. We have taken in a very difficult puzzle, and we have established all of these eliminations. Now you could now further go on and look at the implications from this Junior Exocet, but I'll leave that, and you can then see how this puzzle moves forward with all of these eliminations. Thank you for listening and watching this second video on the Junior Exocet.